Welcome back to Beyond Chronic Burnout. This show is designed for neurodivergent, disabled individuals, and professionals in high stress fields, offering tools and support to break free from burnout and cultivate a joyful, harmonized life. In this second episode of our special series on grief, I'm joined by Peta O'Brien Day, a brand messaging strategist, podcast host. You have to check out her show. It's so good. And fellow neurodivergent professional. After the devastating loss of her husband, Peta found not only grief, but also burnout. In today's episode, she shares how she found her way back to joy and creativity through a career pivot, authenticity, and practicing tools for managing stress. This conversation is packed with insights, hope, and a reminder that it's okay to take life one step at a time. Let's dive in.
Step out of the shadows, feel the power rise, catch the spark inside you, let your spirit fly, beyond the chronic burnout, carol dreams you'll guide, find your steady rhythm, nice joy on the tide, flourish forward, bright and bold, leave the burnout far behind, in this journey hearts unfold. Yours, seek and find.
Now, before we jump into today's episode and conversation, let me introduce our amazing guest, Peta O'Brien. Peta is a brand messaging strategist and conversion copywriter who helps socially conscious businesses weave their values into powerful messaging without the fear of being canceled. She's also the host of the Soapbox podcast. I've been a guest, and leads the Soapbox community where purpose-driven business owners come together to learn and grow. It's such a fabulous place. You have to check it out. Today, Peta is going to share her deeply personal journey of transitioning from a 15-year career in youth work after the loss of her husband and how burnout played a huge role in that shift. We'll hear how she found space for joy, creativity, and authenticity as she navigated grief and career changes. And she's going to also share practical tools that she uses to avoid burnout now. I'm so excited. Welcome to the show, Peta.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for ages.
Me too. And at the beginning of the week, when I saw you were on my calendar for later this week, it's been like the happy tingles, like, I can't wait for Thursday. I can't wait for Thursday. Because when we had our conversation on your show, I mean, first of all, you're just a joy and a delight to visit with anyway, but I love what you bring to the conversation and just the lens and the approach, being socially conscious, being able to share your views without the fear of like the world turning and canceling you. Because that's a legitimate thing. And in, the autistic neurodivergent community, I see it happen all the time. And it's just heartbreaking because it creates this damage to so many people.
Mm-hmm. And I think especially for those people I work with who are neurodivergent, there's such a strong sense of justice as well. So they want to speak out on the things that they care about, and they want to feel like they're making an impact and making something better. So helping them do that in a way that protects their brand, but protects their kind of well-being, is really valuable, I think.
Oh, valuable indeed. It really is. And I think that's one of the things that you are so skilled at. You bring such a beautiful zone of genius to this in how you help someone craft their authentic messaging, where it's truly shared in a way that is so heart-centered, but with a purpose and a mission. And I just love that about the work that you do.
Thank you. No, it's a lot of fun.
Okay, so we got to dive into your story here. How in the world did you get to this place where you're leaving a 15-year career? I mean, you were vested.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was, I put my heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears and all those kind of things, and had never really envisaged doing anything else since once I started. So yeah, it was a big choice. Um, but at the same time, as we'll get to, like, it wasn't really a choice. It wasn't. It had been what I wanted to do, and it had been what I'd loved doing. But yeah, there came a point where it just wasn't really possible anymore.
So, Peter, for you, and this is where I love to start the show with everybody, because everyone's experience of burnout is different and there's some similarities. And I think your story is something that doesn't get talked about enough. And it's when you hit that point where maybe you've been in some degree of burnout and that's been your set point for a long time, high stress and in youth work, that's a high stress job. It's very emotionally draining. So, there probably was this sort of set point of this is just my norm, but it wasn't your optimum. And then you suffered a tragic and tremendous loss. Where did your husband's death occur in this process of deciding to
Sure.
leave your job? And what did the combination of burnout and grief, how did that show up for you? Like, what thoughts did you have? What feelings? Like, what behaviors or actions showed up in your world in
Yeah.
that season? Because there's a lot of people that are in that intersection.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And I think you're right. Like, being in such an emotionally draining, emotionally heavy role means that, yeah, you're not operating at optimum level, like, for the whole time. You can't do it. There will be moments where it will be lovely and rewarding, and then there will be days where you're like, everything went terribly wrong, and I'm not making any impact, and everything's very stressful and I can't cope. So I started youth work very young. I started helping out at a youth group that I used to go to, because otherwise it was going to get shut down. And I'm the kind of person who, like, if there's a room full of people and something needs to be done and everybody is just like shuffling and putting their hands behind their back, I get really annoyed, and I'm like, fine, I'll do it. Which is,
I relate.
And that's pretty much how I end up doing most things. But I mean, it generally works out okay in the end. So so I started it at quite a young age, doing it voluntarily, and then realized that rather than the career in kind of politics and policy that I was heading down initially, this was the stuff that I was enjoying doing. Like, it was where I could make a difference on the ground. I could sit down with teenagers. I could be a listening ear. I could be a critical friend. I could give them advice when they needed it, or just kind of give them toast when they needed that, and be like that space. That was what I loved. And I was really, really good at it. I'm an eldest child. I'm like the big sister / mum in my friendship group. Like, I'm the person that people would come to for advice anyway. So I might as well try and make a career out of it. So I did a degree in youth work, and worked in various places around the country, mainly in churches or community spots. And during that journey, so I met and married my husband, a gorgeous Welshman called Mark, who played the guitar and sang and loved running half marathons. And we got married in 2008, and we had our son Ethan in 2012. Which feels like a million years ago now. So he's just turned 12. He's almost as tall as me, big hair, big smile. And everything was very happy. There were hard moments in my job. There were, like I said, days where I felt like I was making an awful lot of impact. And there were days when I felt like I wasn't. And when you have that kind of job that is so kind of closely tied to the impact that you feel you're having in people's lives or in a particular community, there is a real kind of like roller coaster of emotions that goes along with that, and of stresses and of anxieties. And I had grown up with this idea that you could either choose a career that was a vocation, where you were making a difference, you were doing good in the world, you were doing good for people in various forms, but you wouldn't make a lot of money doing it. Or you could kind of check your soul in at the door for a while and go make big money in the city and in corporations somewhere. And I had chosen the vocational route. And that was kind of with that binary understanding, because I couldn't see myself doing the other thing. And I didn't think that you could combine the two. So it really was a vocation. And that brings with it almost sacrificing yourself on the altar of that vocation. So it's not about looking after yourself. It's not about what you need. It's about putting everybody else's needs and wants and all that kind of thing before you. And so, yeah, so it wasn't necessarily the healthiest level of like self-care and and balance. And then when Ethan, my son, was just turned 2 years old, in 2014, my husband was feeling quite sick very quickly after eating. He was really tired. He had quite a lot of stress at work recently, so he didn't think very much of it. And I kept pushing him to go to the doctor, in that kind of nagging wife kind of way. And he went, "Oh no, it's fine, don't worry," for a while. And then he finally went to the doctor in July of that year. And they took some blood tests and some tests and things like that. And they were like, they found out that he was anemic, and they thought that was a bit odd because he was very, very healthy. And he went to get some more tests, went to a specialist, they did a biopsy, and they discovered that he had stage 4 stomach cancer. Off the back of nothing more than just feeling quite sick after eating and being quite tired. He would kind of run 10Ks and half marathons regularly. He was very healthy, very fit. There were no other signs at all. So we started a round of chemotherapy. They decided that it was inoperable, and we were pretty much put in a position where it was palliative. Like there wasn't really anything that we could do, and we were told that he probably had about 18 months, and they would try and kind of make that as long as possible and as comfortable as possible. That was in the August of 2014, and he died on the 30th of October in 2014. So we didn't get as long as they promised, and nowhere near. And he went downhill fairly rapidly. Stomach cancer is pretty much like that. It tends to go unnoticed unless you're having tests for other things, and then it tends to kind of hit fairly swiftly. So so I was probably about 11, 12 years into, maybe 10 years into a youth work career with a small boy, and just me. So it was a big change.
I so often think about this, and I had a guest on the show, and we were both talking about the fact that we don't pause to acknowledge that whatever big thing has just transpired in our life has created, a stress of some kind. I mean, it could even be something really good. It could be something horrific. It could be something sort of in between. And I think we have been conditioned so often to go, or circumstantially, we just have to keep going. And sometimes we're in a position where we don't have a choice. There isn't the support there for us to really allow space to process, to integrate, to say, this was really awful, or this was really stressful, and I just need a minute.
Yeah.
I just need some space before I move to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Peta, what did you notice? I mean, first of all, God, my heart so much to young child, sick husband,
Mm-hmm.
and the stress there.
Yeah.
And then to lose him so much faster than
Mm-hmm.
you had anticipated. How did that show up for you in your stress and just your thoughts, your feelings?
An awful lot of compartmentalizing, honestly.
Survival, baby.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And 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 obviously it's very different when you look back and you look at and you see what you were doing at the time. And I mean, I've had therapy over the years and talked it through and journaled it through a lot. But pretty much an emotional shutting down because it was too much to deal with. Like, and there were too many moving parts. And I am, like I said, I'm an eldest daughter. I'm conditioned to be pragmatic. Like you look at the situation, and yes, it may very well suck, whatever the situation is, not to be flippant, but you look at the situation and you look at how you can get through that situation in the best way possible, or in the easiest way possible, or in the quickest way possible. So when I look back at my instincts and my actions through his illness, and then in like the immediate aftermath of his death, it was all very much, okay, what do I need to do? What can I do now? What do I need to do now? What does somebody else need me to do? And then I can deal with how I'm feeling, or I can deal with me, or I can put me back together later, because I'll still be here later and there'll be time later.
Oh, thank you for being so honest and open to share the awareness of the compartmentalizing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think so many of us do that. Yeah. We compartmentalize, but don't realize it in the moment, because it's like you expressed. It's, okay, what do I do next? I mean, I remember times in my life where there were these massive stresses, especially, when my second husband was very, very ill. And until you said that, I didn't really put it in that framework. I would put on okay, I'm Carol Jean, I'm going to the hospital to work. Yep. And do the things I need to do. Then I come home and I'm mom. Mm-hmm. And then after I'm mom, then I'm like wife and caretaker. And then there might be 2 seconds for me to brush my teeth and brush my hair and get whatever crud is in my hair out before I fall into the bed exhausted. Mm-hmm. Or I would fall into the bed exhausted and I was so desperately needing sleep, but then my mind would start running through everything that I hadn't gotten to that day that needed to happen the next day. And I would be like wide awake for hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think so much of my brain was like caught up with all those moving parts, that there wasn't space for me to step away and have that perspective and realize that was what I was doing, which as a youth worker and someone who'd spent a lot of time like learning about and studying and working with human behavior and emotions, and who interestingly had taken a course 6 months previously on helping children and young people deal with bereavement, before I even knew my husband was sick, which was just weird. Like I knew all the right things that I should be doing, but I couldn't step away and kind of apply those to me.
Yeah. I love that you said, I want to talk about prioritizing others and how that kind of shows up in delaying the grief process. Mm-hmm. What is what has this been for you? What is this experience, or what do you want people to know about this if
Sure.
someone might be in this place today?
Yeah, I think it's easier. It might not look it from the outside. It might look like the easiest thing to do is to curl up under a duvet by yourself and kind of weep for hours. But actually, in my experience, when you're in that situation, that's the hardest thing to do, because it means facing up to things. It means being real, being truthful with yourself and with other people. I think a lot of the time, putting others first, especially as women, because it's like what we're essentially socialized to do, putting others first is easier. And it's a really simple, quick, socially acceptable avoidance tactic that we can use to not get to the things that we need to do, and not get to the things that will help us. So it was much easier to listen to my in-laws talk about their grief, and work out how I could help them, than it was to talk or think about mine. It was much easier to go back to work, because then I would have something to do, because that was a socially acceptable, it was socially acceptable to keep yourself busy, or to focus on bringing some more money and all that kind of thing. It was much easier to focus on my son, and obviously that is also incredibly important, and especially at the age that he was, kind of being a stable presence for him was very important. But honestly, that became my excuse for not grieving, for not dealing with the things that I should have dealt with, for not kind of thinking about the anger and the kind of the frustration and all of those things, because and that was my overall kind of focus for, I guess probably it still is a little bit, but I am a lot better at it now. But for years, that was my my horizon. Like, that was my goal, was to make sure that he felt safe and stable, and to be there for him. And everything I did in those few years was to make sure that he was prioritized, which was something that hit me when you came on my podcast and you were talking about kind of your situation. And that was maybe the only thing I could have done in the situation, but it definitely wasn't the healthiest thing, and it contributed to me being completely burnt out, because I gave myself no respite from all the different stresses that I was under, and all the different balls that I was juggling. And it did delay my grief, which meant that I made ridiculous, stupid, risky decisions later on in my life, that had I spent some time prioritizing myself and dealing with my grief and dealing with my feelings, I probably wouldn't have done.
The regret and shame cycle.
Indeed.
on the other side is so real.
Mm-hmm.
So real. Peta, when did, or what was, there's usually either this slow on ramp, this gradual sort of light bulb gets brighter, and we're just like, okay, I have to look at it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's this immediate, like it hits you and you're just like, okay, that's it. This is it. What was the experience like when you recognized, okay, it's now time for me to grieve, or it feels safe enough for me to just at least take half of a full breath, not a full one, but half of a full breath, and looking around, we have the saying in the South, there you stand all spick and span. Where were you when the shit hit the fan? And you're standing there covered, and it's like, you stand there, you're covered, you're looking around going, look, everybody else is clean. And I'm not. I got to do something.
Yeah.
What did that happen for you?
Yeah.
What transpired that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah. I think the first thing that I really noticed while I was kind of rushing at 300 miles an hour through my life, trying to make sure that everybody else was okay, was I stopped caring about the kids that I was working with. Like, I was an exceptional youth worker. Like, I was all in. I was empathetic. I was I would go the extra mile. I would, like, I mean, none of this like with a big ego. That was my Britishness switching on. I started to say nice things about myself. So I was really, really good at it. And I loved it. It was what got me out of bed in the morning. And I knew that I had a purpose, and I knew that I was kind of making a difference. And the first thing that I noticed that made me go, yeah, this is not good, was that I stopped caring. I would half ask my like mentoring sessions. I would try and get out of things. I would not put as much effort into what I was doing. I would find myself snapping at kids that I had endless patience for before. And that was the moment, like the first time I got home after a day at work, and I felt like exhausted and grumpy and terrible and just like depressed at the whole world. And I realized that actually I didn't care about the things that I've been doing anymore. And for me, that was like a massive wake up call. And I spent some time trying to fix it, and it didn't work because I just didn't have the emotional capacity to do it anymore. I was done. I had nothing left. And I went and sat in a field while my son was at nursery. And it was raining, because we like things to be cinematic. And and I cried for like an hour. And I'd been grieving in pockets. I had been like, my son wasn't sleeping, because like his life had been turned upside down and there was a whole load of attachment stuff going on. He wasn't sleeping. It was taking me 2 hours to get him to go to sleep, and then he'd sleep for 45 minutes, and then he'd wake up and the cycle would start again. So I was getting no sleep. He was getting no sleep. I was losing all hope. And I'd get 15 minutes to sit in a corner and cry, and then that would be it. And that moment when I was sat in that field, I think I felt safe because I knew that he was at nursery and he wasn't my responsibility, and I could pick him up a little bit later, and I had that space. And I also let myself realize that I wasn't doing well. And I'm a massive perfectionist, and I'm the kind of person who, if I'm not good at something right away, then I don't want to do it, and I'm very cross with myself. I like doing things well, and I always like to think that I am running my life the best way that I know how. And I think I allowed myself to realize at that moment that actually I wasn't doing very well at all. And that something needed to change. Yes, and that was kind of the turning point where I went, okay, firstly, I need to properly grieve, and secondly, I need a new job.
You're like, all the things, all at once, all the time.
That's the way I do stuff.
Go big or go home.
Yeah.
The self-awareness and the power in that moment.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing that. because that led you to the next part,
It did.
which is, what did you do after the cinematic cry in the field?
The field in the rain. There was a cow and a couple of sheep. It was brilliant.
Very bucolic.
Very. Lots of mascara. So I had at this point I had kind of reached the top of pretty much of my career in youth work. There aren't a lot of places to go. I was managing a little team. I couldn't really, there wasn't anywhere else like a next level that I could move to. So I found a position teaching teaching students how to do youth work in a sixth form centre. And I thought, okay, I'll be a teacher. Everybody in my family is a teacher. It's pretty simple. I can kind of leave it at home and all that kind of thing. So I thought this is a brilliant new plan. It's still a vocation. I can still do it. Sensible hours. I can be a teacher. It did not last very long because I'm a very good teacher, but I am not very good at being employed in a structured environment where people tell.
Me neither.
No,
don't tell me what to do.
No. They tell you what to teach and what to wear and like when to go to the bathroom. And it's all very stressful. And I don't like
micromanaged much.
I know. So whereas I thought that was going to be like my big future, it turned out it was just going to be a stepping stone, which in hindsight was fine. At the time, I was like, I have no other skills. What on earth am I going to do? Also around that time, I started dating. So my friends put me on Match.com back in the day, and
don't you love your friends?
I do. Yeah, they poured me a big glass of wine, and they were like, "Right, what are we going to say about you?" It's like, that's a really unfair question. To
a copywriter.
Yeah, no, I know.
I love it.
Yeah.
The irony.
So I know. And I went on a couple of dates that were duds, and then I met this guy called Nick, and we spent a whole afternoon laughing about everything and nothing, and it was a bit of a whirlwind. And in 6 weeks we were on holiday in Edinburgh together and head over heels, and it was all very lovely. And that idea of newness and kind of the future and seeing things differently and seeing me differently, combined with the realization that actually teaching was going to be terrible and I couldn't really do it, started
number one impact industry for burnout, by the way, y'all.
Yes, that does not surprise me. Yeah. Totally. So that kind of started, that let me see the possibility of something more and something different. It took a really long time. Like, it wasn't kind of like I woke up and I was like, okay, I can't do teaching, so I'm going to be a copywriter. At that point, I didn't even know what a copywriter was. Like, I didn't know it was a thing. I vaguely knew, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, there are websites and there are adverts and people must write them, but I don't know who these people are. So I took a very meandering path. I did some office admin work. I decided that I was going to be an author, and then realized that you can't make any money being an author unless you're like,
I can attest to that fact.
Yeah. So I'm like, maybe I can be an author, but like, it was going to have to be an author and something that pays the bills.
Right.
And then and during this period, Nick and I got married, and I got pregnant with my daughter, with our daughter, and she was born in January 2020. And at this point, I'm still, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pandemic, maybe.
Oh yeah. At this point, I'm still trying to work out what I'm going to do with my life. And I had all these things. Like, I wanted to do something that made a difference, but I also wanted to make some money. And I realized that one of the things that I was realizing through, like, I was going to therapy and this new kind of life that I was imagining, was that it needed to be not all about other people. Like, it needed, there needed to be something in it for me. It couldn't just be, and like, even now, even from where I am right now, it sounds terrible to say, because I have a whole bunch of conditioning about this idea of service and vocation, and I grew up in a very conservative evangelical church, so the idea of putting self before anybody else is just like a whole, like, head mess. But yeah, I knew that there needed to be something more than service in what I was doing. But in the middle of that, I ended up in lockdown in England with a 6-week-old baby and an 8-year-old boy who needed homeschooling. So that kind of put a bit of a dampener on finding a new career. And I had started a blog when I got pregnant with my daughter, about this whole idea of doing something for the second time around. So, like, getting married again, getting pregnant again, having a baby again, raising a baby again, with all the, not mess, but all the complications of having been widowed, and another set of in-laws, and other people's expectations, and all that kind of thing. And a couple of companies found it, an athleisure brand and like a sleep consultant, and they asked me to write something for them from that perspective. And I was like, sure, I love writing. It's great, I could do it. And they paid me some money, and I went, oh, this is a thing. I wonder how it works. So I did some research, and I found out about this wonderful thing called copywriting. I found out that actually I did have a lot of transferable skills that would work really, really well. I did a lot of training. I wrote my first kind of web pages and blogs whilst feeding Erica and trying to put her to sleep when she was a tiny baby, like on my phone. And it kind of brought that spark of joy and excitement that I had been missing for a really long time. It let me be creative within the physical constraints that I had. Like, we had to stay at home, and I was looking after 2 children. But it gave me those moments where I could use that creative part of my brain, and I could get that feedback from my phone. And with clients in the US, it could be like at 2 a.m. because I was up anyway, so it didn't really matter. And that was, honestly, that was life-changing, really. I think I had never really considered that, firstly, that I could make money writing, because I just assumed that you had to have a career as a writer, you had to be an author, and then you wouldn't make any money. But secondly, that that there was something else that I was really good at, and that it was a marketable skill rather than something that had to be a service or a vocation where I worked all the hours that God sent and brought home like a couple of pennies. And that was really, really exciting. And yeah, so I started in those 2 tiny blogs, and I've worked my way up to a business where I work full time from my little loft office. I can work with clients all over the world. People pay me to come up with creative and impactful ways to share their vision, to share their message. I can unpack roadblocks. Like, people will have these incredible offers or these incredible products that they've come up with, that can change people's lives or change people's businesses. But they're really rubbish at talking about them because it's been in their head. It's like their baby, and they know all the things.
It is hard.
It is really hard. Yeah, definitely.
But you do it so easily.
But only for other people.
That's what I admire.
And it's just like that ability to to like hear them talk about the things that they have made with such joy, and then to go away and show them a way that they can communicate that joy and that vision and that passion when they've been stuck and not sure that anybody else would kind of catch that. So in a way, like, there is an element of serving others to it. Like, I'm able to make that impact with other people. But it's also something that, that brings me joy through being that creative. And I think that's what I had been missing for a really, really long time. That ability to kind of be creative and be joyous, while doing something that also makes money and supports my family.
That's just, there's so much beautiful power in the story that you've shared of your journey. As I'm, sort of from my side of things, listening and knowing what I know of you, to be able to go, yes, and this is exactly where you're meant to be in this moment, because you bring this glorious heart, this knowledge and wisdom of experience and what you learned early in your career, from behavioral health work. And that is such a huge, massive part of copywriting, of messaging. And you take where someone else has been stuck. And I think you have such compassion after knowing what it feels like to be in that stuck, and go, wait, hang on. This is glorious. This is joyful. This is beautiful. And I can use my zone of genius to help you remove the barriers, unlock the joy, and really tap into your creativity in a whole new way with mine. And it's this co-creation. And the campaigns and the things that I've seen that you've done, I'm always just blown away, because I suck at that. I'm so bad at it. It is not my zone at all. And I'm like, I am the creator. I'm the developer. I can do the thing and all the big stuff over here, but then I got to talk about it. And it's just like word vomit. And people are like, oh, stop talking. It's too much. And it's like the info dump, because, that's my love language.
Yeah.
And you take the info dump and you turn it into this very beautiful thing. That helps create revenue and sustainable revenue for glorious creators and people in their businesses. So you, my friend, have got some pretty awesome tools for sharing with everyone today on how they can manage burnout, tools for recalibrating. And I love that, the recalibration, that word, the wordsmith that you are. So talk to us about, how the hell do we manage it? What tools can we use to recalibrate if we are so far off, out of our zone, and we are feeling heavy, and we have people pleased and compartmentalized, and we are sitting in the field with the tears. What the heck do we do, Peta?
Yeah, that's we don't want to be staying. I mean, you can stay in the field for a while, but then you have to get up and dry off. Okay, so the first thing that I have learned, and it's taken me a really long time to learn, is that you don't have to feel embarrassed about whatever the thing is that helps you make that break, which was a very bad way of describing it for a wordsmith. But let me give you an example. Okay, so I like games. I'm quite geeky, really. I like kind of action sci-fi movies. I like stories. I like games on my phone. I used to play that, like, there was a sim hospital game where you could like build a hospital and then you had to keep it running a million years ago on a PC. Like, I'm really, really geeky. And so I like games on my phone, whether it's something like the Evermerge thing where you like group things together, and you like essentially make order out of chaos. Like you tidy up, you're tidying up, but just with
Oh, I
pixels.
have these games on my phone.
Oh, cool, excellent, they're brilliant. I love them. But for a really long time, I wouldn't tell anybody that I loved them. And if I spent any time on them during the day, I would feel really embarrassed and be really ashamed if I was wasting time. But I have come to realize that actually sometimes my brain needs a circuit breaker, which is a better way of explaining it. I'm going to write that down. It needs like almost like some white noise, but I'm not a white noise kind of person. It just needs to like
Brown noise.
Oh, that's a good idea. But like to switch from one thing to another, and I can't do that with music because I get too emotionally involved in whatever they're singing, the lyrics. So I do that with the little merging games. So if I have had a particularly stressful call, or if drop off with my children at school, because my son's autistic and he gets very anxious about going into school, sometimes that's really, really stressful. And the urge was always to get on with whatever else I was meant to be doing in the day. But actually, I have found that if I spend 5, 10, 15 minutes playing a little game on my phone, I'm not wasting time. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm not being childish. I'm not being selfish. I'm not being any of those things. I'm giving my brain the circuit breaker that it needs to take a breath, to recalibrate, and then to have more capacity to deal with whatever is coming next in my day. So that's my first one.
Oh, I love it so much. I have those games on my phone, and when I notice I use them the most to recalibrate are in those transition times. Like if I've had to, because we live out in the country and I got to drive to the city to go to the grocery store. And it's like 20, 30 minutes and it's kind of chaotic by the time you get there. So I park and I play on my phone. Sometimes it'll be 5 minutes. Sometimes it'll be 20 or 30 minutes before I feel like I am geared up and ready. I feel like I am centered and recalibrated enough to then go into the grocery store, grocery shop, and then come back out, right? And sometimes I need that 5 minutes before I drive back home with the groceries. And in the summer, you got to have an igloo so your groceries don't melt if you need transition time. That's so good. Because, I internalized that same thing. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be playing on my phone. I'm wasting time.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. And I love that one. All right. What else you got? That's so good.
So the second one is being authentic in the thing that you have to do. So like I have to have a job, I have to have a career, and I love bits of it, I love quite a lot of it, but I don't do it the way a lot of other people do. So the generally accepted thing to do with kind of copywriters, with marketers, is like niche down, or niche down if you're being American about it. So like
I say niche.
Oh, that's cool. Excellent. It's like the riches are in the niches, and I'm like, no, because that's not how you say it. Anyway, so you niche down. You niche down. You pick one industry, and you become like the best copywriter for I don't know, pharmacies, or the best copywriter for people who coach other people to be coaches. And if you do that, then you narrow your experience, and you become known as the expert, and then you can charge higher prices and all that kind of thing. And yes, that might be very sensible. However, when I tried to do that, I was miserable, because I know that to be authentically me, I need a lot of things to keep me interested. So I know that if I was to stick in one niche for a long period of time, I would get so bored that eventually I would want to burn my whole entire business down. I would get burnt out on writing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So I know that in order to recalibrate on a regular basis, in order to have that space, I need to I need to be varied in who I work with. And so I'm really intentional about that. Like, I make sure that I have different projects going on at different times. So I never get, I never have to stay stuck in one place doing one thing, using all the energy, using all the capacity that I have on that, and then just flopping into bed at the end of the day. I always know that I've got an interesting project to jump into for like an hour or so that I've got running on in the background, so I can refresh myself. I know that I've got little pockets of things or little bits of copy or little challenges, really sticky kind of messaging problems that if it's feeling a bit flat, if the stuff that I'm writing isn't great, like one morning or one afternoon, or if I'm finding myself staring off into space and there's nothing there, then I can jump into those inspiring little pockets of problems or projects, and refresh myself. I don't know, almost like having, we talked about Diet Coke when he came on my podcast, but also like almost like having like a can of Diet Coke, but in project or in kind of bits of copy form. So I don't run my business in the way that a copywriter might traditionally run my business. I run it in a way that authentically is me, because I am lots of different things and I need to jump all over different places and I can't stick in one place. So that's my second tool. Find a way to be authentically you in your work and the thing that you have to do.
Oh, and that is a powerful one, because in my research, the number 3 biggest energy drain when it is unmet, unnourished, and then lacking in our life, it's authenticity.
Yeah.
And we got to have, just as humans, and me as an ADHDer over here, I got to have some novelty. As humans, we seek novelty. And so, a friend of mine came on the show and we talked about the whiz pops. And I always think about like those little glimmers of novelty is like the whiz pops.
Yeah.
Gotta have those whiz pops. I love it. Oh, it sounded like you had a third one. So I want to
I do have a third one.
Give me the juice, give me the goodness.
So I, one of the things that kept me going through all of the ridiculous craziness that has been my life, has been movement. And I know it's not groundbreaking, but I was the girl at school who would avoid sports and games like the plague. Like I would forge notes from my mum, or just get to write me them, because she wasn't really that bothered about me missing PE. I felt awkward about it all. I didn't feel comfortable playing sports or anything like that. So if you'd have gone back in time and told me back at school that I would be currently training for a marathon, she would have laughed at you and probably thought that you were talking about somebody else. And she would have done it in a very kind of sarcastic British way. So I'm training for a marathon at the moment. Running hasn't always been the thing. For a long while, it was kind of, so for about 12 years, I've done the Tracy Anderson method, which is a bit like Pilates on heroin or something. It's insane. But it's a way of connecting to my body again. So it's not like I get almost somatic in that way. I've never been able to do meditation. I can't quiet my brain. I can't switch it off. It feels like I'm doing it wrong, and then I worry about doing it wrong instead of doing the actual thing. But when I move, when I'm exercising, when I'm walking, when I'm running, when I'm dancing, all of those things gets me out of my head and into my body. And I think that I have spent most of my life up in my head, and it doesn't help me, because it means that I overthink everything and all that kind of stuff. When I get back into my body, everything just feels a lot more hopeful and a lot easier. It feels a lot lighter. It feels, it doesn't feel like I can handle everything, because I know that I can't handle everything. But I don't know, there's probably a chemical reason. There is a chemical reason and a hormonal reason and all those kind of things. But yeah, it calms me, it keeps me balanced, it keeps me regulated, and and recalibrated. So that is my third. Not groundbreaking, but very important.
I cannot celebrate that one more. I'm a late in life runner. I didn't start running until I was 42 and I'm 50. And I had gotten, when we were in Kentucky, I'd worked up to where I was training for a half marathon, my very first one. But I started, I was the same. Meditation, I tried it. It made me, it gave me hives. I wanted to jump out of my own skin. I could not sit still. I am a mover, and that did not work for me. And it made me feel even worse, because then I was like, well, I can't do this. And I'm like, I was like, I want to be able to do this, and I want to do it well. And this is not working. This is not going well. And I started running, and I was very overweight and very out of shape, because I had been bedridden for many years when I started this. And I found the rhythm, the vibrational resonance from my feet hitting the pavement when I got a sustained rhythm and pattern became meditative for me. It was where I discovered for myself, holy crap, my brain just got quiet, because I'm like the thought calisthenic girl. I run the 3-ring circus in my head, and there's 5 of those 3-ring circuses and 10 tracks of music. And I discovered my quiet when I would run. And I think one of the things that also showed up for me, the rhythm, the vibration, the quiet, but it was, I could be present and notice and observe my body without wanting to be out of it like I had for most of my life.
Yeah.
It was a really unique transformation and awareness shift for me in moving my body.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
That's okay.
It was so good. Well, I want to know where people can find you, how they can work with you, because if you're an entrepreneur out there and you got products and feel like you got blocks, this is your girl.
Yes, come and find me. Okay, so you can come and find me on LinkedIn and on Instagram. I'm always there. So on LinkedIn, I'm Peta O'Brien Day. On Instagram, I'm All Words by Peta. You will see pictures of me. I had some very lovely photos done by a good friend that have stood me in very good stead for my content. My website is wordsbypeta.com. I love connecting with new people. I love networking. I love having actual conversations rather than just, following people on social media. So yeah, if you've listened, you want to chat some more, come and DM me on any of those platforms. And let's chat, whether or not you have a product or a service that you need help selling, or you just want to chat to another human being. I would love to speak to you.
And you are an amazing person to connect with and have a conversation. And don't forget, you got to go check out Peta's amazing podcast, the Soapbox Podcast. And I will link my episode down below that I did with her, so you can find the show, you can check her out, go look at all the incredible things that she's doing in the world to help people, businesses, and people with a mission, a passion, and a purpose to share that out in the world. And I love what you do with the Soapbox Podcast.
Thank you.
Peta, if there is anyone listening today and they find themselves in a place where they feel like, this is not the job for me anymore, and I don't know what I need to do, maybe I've compartmentalized myself to death, what is the one thing from your heart to theirs you'd like to say?
Whenever anybody in our family has a tricky problem to solve and they don't know what the next step is, we always get out a big roll of wallpaper or a big roll of paper and a lot of marker pens. And then a bunch of us will gather around and we will write down all the things that. So, for example, if you're talking about a new career or a new job move, we'll write all the things that we know that person is good at. We will write down the craziest ideas about what they could be or what they could do. We will write down things that they definitely shouldn't do because of this particular reason, and it will turn into a big long conversation that essentially always ends up with some really good ideas. And then we hold on to those rolls of wallpaper and we kind of put them behind sofas, and every now and again we'll get them out and we'll kind of either marvel at how prescient it all was, or we'll laugh at how ridiculous it was. But the reason it works is because you get rid of all preconceptions, and you just put down, you don't go, oh, I can't possibly do that. You don't self-censor. You put everything down on paper, and you get the people that you love and trust to help you do that brainstorming and things. So if you have people you can gather around you to do that, then yeah, that is what I would suggest.
Oh, I want to go get a roll of butcher paper just for the fun of this. I cannot wait. I am bringing some friends, and we have game night over here because we play Delta Green and Dungeons and Dragons over here. So I feel like we may have put pause on game night just to do that for that. Ooh, I love it. That's going to be fun. That's a great suggestion. Peta O'Brien Day, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story, your transformational recalibration, and the light that you are shining in the world, because you, my friend, are faceted and glorious.
Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure.
As we wrap up this episode of Beyond Chronic Burnout, I want to remind you of your incredible brilliance. Embrace your uniqueness and know that your journey is one of strength and compassionate curiosity. I'm Carol Jean Whittington, and I'm so honored to be on this journey with you. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn. And for more energizing episodes, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube at Beyond Chronic Burnout. Let's continue thriving together, my friend. Remember, you have the power to break free from burnout and unleash your authentic self. Until our next engaging conversation, take care and keep shining brightly.
Thanks for being here. It's been quite a ride. Energy mastery, let's turn the tide. Top shelf guests, dropping wisdom bombs. Join us next week, where the energy's strong. Beyond chronic.